Welcome to today's talk about photosynthesis for Bio 107. We are going to be learning about the roles of light and carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis. Gosh, that makes it sound so simple. And then in the lab, we'll use a floating leaf disk assay to measure photosynthesis and then graph and analyze that data. And you're going to design your own experiment. Super exciting. First thing I want you to do is think about how a tree, for example, because they're so big and massive and changing colors and inspirational right now in the fall. But it starts out as a little tiny seed, right? And it becomes this massive thing, right? Object, organism. How does it get there? Stop the recording, sit down, write it down somewhere. You don't have to keep it, but write it down and really think it through. Are you stopping it? I hope you did. Anyways, many people don't understand this, and that's totally fine. And by the end of this, you are going to be smarter than most Harvard graduates because you will know how a tree gets to be so massive. It's logical, but we're going to get there. Basic reaction for photosynthesis is 6 carbon dioxide, 6 CO2, plus 6 water molecules. Using light energy from the sun. That's very important. We've got light energy input here. Producing 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. There you go. You should know that. That's an important reaction to know. This is all taking place in the chloroplast. Here's a better picture. Drawing a little less complicated. Again, we have an organelle that is bean-shaped that has an outer and inner membrane. We got a fancy name for the cytoplasm inside it. That's the stroma. Thylakoids are more. We got a lot of internal membranes and a lot of surface area. Again, just like we saw in the mitochondria in when we were talking about cellular respiration. Here is a delightful diagram showing the whole thing in one picture. Right? We've got water coming into the chloroplast, doing the light reactions where light energy is exciting electrons in photosystem 1 and 2, doing the electron transport chain, creating another concentration gradient, just like cellular respiration, remember. Okay, oxygen is released here. Again, we needed that oxygen to be an electron acceptor, just like cellular respiration. Making ATP. Okay, so we're converting the light energy from the sun into chemical energy in ATP. This is a big thing that you need to know. Light energy converted into chemical energy. Nothing makes energy. It just changes. The light coming from the energy coming from the sun is all we've got here, and plants can convert that light into chemical energy that everything else can use. It's pretty cool. And ATP goes in to power the Calvin cycle. We make carbon from carbon dioxide. It gets changed and added, and that energy is stored in the carbon bonds, and eventually glucose is exported. Okay, some comes out of starch. This again, we've got another cycle that's going around and around and around and around, regenerating enzymes. Gotta love it. Here we go. But this is hopefully this diagram will help you with your studying. Okay. Whoa, looks blurry on my screen. Apologies. Photosynthesis and aerobic or cellular respiration are the opposite of each other, right? We have that carbon dioxide and water plus energy in, releasing glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration, taking that glucose with oxygen, breaking it down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy out in the form of ATP. So that's an important, particularly the energy part of that. I also want to talk about photosynthesis as carbon storage. Okay, here is a graph of carbon dioxide from the Antarctic ice cores. Okay, so it's pretty cool. They dig down the ice and they can figure out when that layer of ice was laid down and how much carbon dioxide was in the atmosphere. Okay, and we can see that concentration has been going up, steadily increasing in this graph the last 50, 60 years. Okay, here's an interesting little tidbit. The carbon dioxide fluctuates yearly because photosynthesis is suppressed in the winter. Right? So carbon dioxide levels go up a little bit in the winter every year because the trees aren't sucking it in to do photosynthesis, and then it comes down a little bit in the summer. But even with that up and down, we're still seeing a strong increase in parts per million of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Okay. Here's another way of looking at the photosynthesis up here, right? And cellular respiration working in tandem. Okay, so when photosynthesis is happening, carbon dioxide is being used up and collecting energy from the sun and storing the energy and the carbon in that glucose molecule. Right? When we break down that glucose using oxygen, we release carbon dioxide and the chemical energy then that is used for cells and other things. But the carbon dioxide and energy are released there in cellular respiration. Okay. So let's take a look at that glucose molecule to understand a little bit more about the carbon storage. This is a 6 carbon sugar. Here's one. And then at each of these corners is another carbon molecule. We just don't say it because would be too non-confusing. But that's 6 carbon molecules stored in that glucose. And plants in particular can take those glucose molecules and string them together to make cellulose. It's a little different than starch, but same idea. All right. And we talked about starch in the dialysis in the diffusion lab. Remember, it's a really big molecule, like 3,000 glucose molecules stuck together. Okay, right. So you take a cellulose starch molecule and put many of them together and to this what would be called a microfibril. Don't worry about these names, but the idea is these are many molecules, so now this microfibril has even more molecules of cellulose in it, right? Because each one is many molecules, and then they're joined together in a fibril, which has even more of these microfibrils in there, and that is what makes up the structure of the cell wall of the plant, which is, as we again talked about in the diffusion lab, a fairly rigid structure. Right, so that's a lot of cellulose that's in that cell wall. In a tree, that solid wood that we think about either in a log or thinking about furniture that's made out of wood. I mean, think about sturdy, the lab bench kind of, a cabinet is made out of, right? That sturdiness, all that is cell walls that the tree produced. Okay, so all of that that mass, that strength is coming from the carbon glucose molecules arrangement in the cellulose microfibril into the cell walls, right? And then lots and lots and lots of cell walls in the wood being strong. Okay, so that tree, go back to where you wrote down how this works, right? That tree is taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, gas, right? You can't see it. It's there. It's all around you. And turning it into the cellulose mass and growing and getting stronger and taller all the time. So it's a great carbon sink, right? This tree is storing carbon. If we burn it, burn wood at a campfire, heat and light are released. That energy that is also stored in the cellulose molecules is released. This is how we generate all of our electricity. Coal, oil, natural gas are all made from dead plants that grew millions of years ago and were crushed under layers of soil and turned into those energy-rich materials due to pressure and heat under the earth, under layers of rocks. And we are burning them now to get to school and turn on the lights and heat the water and be warm. But that is releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere at a faster rate than it would have been done by just the plant dying. So we really need to get out there and plant more trees to suck up all this carbon dioxide that we are producing. Okay, I want to talk really quickly about light and photosynthesis. Here's a graph showing which wavelengths of light plants use to do photosynthesis. So most of the light they're able to use is in the blue to purple range, right? Drops way down in green, so it's going back up with yellow. We get another high peak here in the orange to red wavelengths. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can go backwards. Why does this work? All the colors of visible light come from the sun, all right? And pigments in something absorb or reflect that light, okay? And whatever color is reflected that they aren't using is what goes to our eyes, okay? If it's reflected, it's not absorbed, it's not using that energy, okay? So the pigment in bananas absorbs red and orange and green and blue and purple wavelengths of light, but it reflects the yellow, and that's why bananas look yellow. Chloroplasts, green things, green leaves, right? Again, absorb that full rainbow. They only showed red, green, blue here, but everything's in there, right? But it reflects the green light to our eyes, which is why we see the green grass. So does this make sense then? In terms of this, that green light is reflected back to us, right? It makes leaves look green, and that's how why we see things looking green, okay? And because it's reflected, the plants can't use that energy, so it's not reflected here in this spectrum. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about really quickly is leaf anatomy. So you can understand this. All right, we've got this top layer of cells, which is the waxy coating. We've got the palisade parenchyma here. You can see these up and down vertical cells, lots of chloroplasts packed in. We want to get as many chloroplasts near the top of the leaf to get the solar energy hitting. Vascular bundles transport water. This area here, though, looks very different, right? This is the spongy parenchyma, and there's all this air space in here to do the gas exchange, right? Guard cells here. There's another section open around the stomata to allow carbon dioxide and oxygen to be exchanged, right? But then the cells also need empty airspace in order to do that. And that's going to be an important thing to think about when we're talking about our floating leaf discs. Please read through the lab so you have an idea about what we're doing, and I will see you in class on Wednesday.